What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Jujutsu Kaisen Chapter Review. Today we're going to be going over Chapter 270, The Dream's End. This chapter is going to be covering the end of the Culling Game arc and basically the aftermath of all of the incidents that happened after Shibuya, after the worst Halloween Japan has ever seen. It also touches base with most of the remaining cast, whether that be Jujutsu sorcerers that we didn't see last chapter, or the reincarnated players of the Culling Game that are either A, still alive, or they were modern age sorcerers that were awoken due to Kenjaku's meddling. To be honest with you, it really seems like even though there is one chapter left, there is going to be so many things that just go either unanswered or unexplained. And while I will always have a special place for Jujutsu Kaisen in my heart, 270 chapter run was absolutely amazing. I definitely enjoyed the entire journey of the story that Gege Akutami was able to tell to us. Introducing characters like Higuruma Hiromi, Kashimo Hajime, I enjoyed the charisma behind every single one of those characters, and I would never say that the Culling Game was a failure by any sense of the means. The fight between Gojo and Sukuna, everything that happened was just some of the best shonen manga that I've seen in a long time, but we also have to be honest with ourselves here and call out some of the things that are apparently just never going to be explained to us, and we're either going to have to come up with our own headcanons, or maybe, I don't know, this last chapter really is going to be a tell-all experience. But from what I'm able to see, it seems like this last chapter is going to be a nice little epilogue, perhaps focusing on the very last portion of the Culling Game with a reincarnated player or a modern age player using their curse technique to curse someone else. These dropped plot points are going to consist of, one of the most egregious things for me has to be the military. The entire plot point just seems not just brushed over way earlier on in the story, right? Because the military plot point is something that gets introduced very early on in the Culling Game. We see Kenjaku meet with politicians in China. We see Kenjaku meet with politicians in the United States. And it seems like even Reggie Starr brings this up. So it seems like it's going to be a really integral portion of the Culling Game. And sure, you could argue that it is an integral portion of the Culling Game. I mean, the military members literally gave the Culling Game barriers the cursed energy that was necessary for the merger to happen. Kenjaku, supposedly, according to the plot that we were given to us, was not able to start the merger, start the end of the Culling Game without having all of the cursed energy from the military people. Because apparently he did not account for having enough players, because apparently the people that he got to all kill each other and ravage and start a whole, chaos inside the different barriers was not enough. And the military portions that we got, we got some United States soldiers introduced. We had the whole idea of sorcerers being turned into constant powerhouse electricity for all these different nations to power. Screw electricity when we can have someone like Gojo power an entire country, right? I don't understand why, one, with such an amazing plot point that the soldiers would just die to all of the different cursed spirits released, and, we would have some slight encounterings with them, like Yuji and Megumi encountered some soldiers here and there, and Angel saved a couple of them. One of them murdered the helicopter curse technique guy, but all that happens off screen, we get these whole things of these three top soldiers with their kill counts. Remy literally gets kidnapped. Hazanoki is able to fight off some of the soldiers. Imagine if Gege gave that like 5-6 chapters to cook, gave it a little bit more time to just mold into a cohesive story. I've said this multiple times if you've seen some of my streams. Imagine if we got like the final Yuji duo fight, some kind of sniper or some kind of crazy soldier, and Megumi has to intellectually find his way through and fight the soldier. Or, you know what, one of the biggest things that we're also missing out on is Itadori's whole side of the Culling Game, right? Like, what happened to Yuji's parents? What happened to Yuji's mom? What happened to Yuji's dad? Jin Itadori supposedly had the twin soul of Ryomen Sukuna, and we don't even know how he died. We don't know what Kenjaku did to them. We don't even know when Kenjaku switched from Itadori's mom to the body that he's in now of Geto. We don't know how that happened. We don't know if maybe he lost Kaori Itadori, if we don't know how his grandpa got custody. While we got answers in regards to Yuji's origin, with him always having a Sukuna finger inside of him and his dad being the twin soul of Ryomen Sukuna that Ryomen Sukuna ate in the womb way back in the Heian era. Not only do we get an explanation as to how the hell that even happened, sure, you could argue reincarnation, but that was never explained to us. Why did Kenjaku know that this person had Sukuna's soul? Why was that so important to Kenjaku? And was Kenjaku trying to create a new Sukuna when we get that one panel of the Eye of the Storm of Curses will never end as long as people like Sukuna and Yuji exist? Like, was Kenjaku looking to create a new Sukuna because Sukuna wasn't alive anymore? We'll never know, apparently. We also have the whole entire debacle of Tengen. You know, Tengen is revealed to slowly be rotting inside of Sukuna's curse remains. Sure, the pure barriers that uphold all of Jujutsu society, and just to be clear, when I say all of Jujutsu society, the only reason Japan has so many sorcerers, so much cursed energy, and so many cursed spirits is because of these pure barriers. It was said that the only reason the Culling Game even happened is because Kenjaku based the Culling Game off of these pure barriers, and Tengen had all authority to remove the pure barriers, but that would have brought the age of Jujutsu into another dark age where none of the sorcerers would have understood how to set up a new barrier. Cursed spirits would ravage the entire world, and cursed energy probably just wouldn't be either as strong, or it would be even worse. There'd be even worse chaos than the Shibuya incident. It's kind of unclear how bad it would happen. We just know that we didn't want this to happen, and we try to put countermeasures in place. And even though Gaku Kanji gets some great character development, because Gaku Kanji's like, hey, you know what, everyone is young, everyone is living their life, you can't take the youth away from the young, which is something that Gojo says. So it's beautiful to see Gaku Kanji growing as a person and seeing the effect that Gojo had on someone like Gaku Kanji, an old fart like him. We knew he had to get down at some point. I mean, bro played guitar, you know, he was a gnarly teenager, but he just became head ass fucking old head. Tengen, on the other hand, besides the whole pure barrier thing, we will never find out what his or her relationship was to Sukuna, what it was to Kenjaku. Apparently Kenjaku and Tengen were long lost friends. Even Sukuna knew about it. What was the whole idea of Sukuna's remains being ironic about Tengen? What was the whole idea? How did Tengen even get Sukuna's remains in the first place? This whole Heian era black spot on the entire Jujutsu Kaisen lore is, you could argue we never needed a Heian era backstory. You know, you always have the Star Wars midichlorian arguments. Do we need an answer to every question? Absolutely not. I would never argue in favor of an author answering every single question, but certain questions definitely need answers. And while we didn't need everything, it would have been nice to get at least a little bit of information on this, because again, it's kind of similar to the Yuji thing, where it's all we can think of is headcanon reasons for this, but we have no concrete reason. I mean, at the end of the day, Kenjaku was a villain who made it all the way to the end point, and then when he died right before the merger could happen, he just said, oh, you know what, it is what it is. Oh well, you know what, I died. Which it really does blow my mind that not only was Kenjaku's death given a couple pages and then moved on from, even Sukuna's death was given a couple pages and moved on from. I mean, you could argue Sukuna had literally like 50 chapters of battle, so sure, he didn't need that much time. But when you really put it into perspective and you realize that Panda's inner siblings, the gorilla and the rhinoceros or the triceratops sibling that Panda had, right? Those characters that we spent no time with, we didn't even know they were real characters. Maybe they were just individual transformations of Panda. The fact that those characters got an entire chapter dedicated to their death, characters that we never even met. Sure, you could argue Panda deserved that characterization. Sukuna and Kenjaku got less pages combined than the two sibling souls that we've never met or had any kind of personality with behind. I mean, you could see small hints of deaths being glossed over with Yaga, but we were going into the Culling Game, right? We were kind of blinded by the pace of the story. We said, oh my god, Gege did that really fast, but you know what? Gege writes really fast. These deaths, I feel like, should have been given more time, especially because now you have everyone who thinks that Kenjaku Geto has returned. Obviously, I think the whole idea of Takaba bringing Kenjaku back, or bringing someone that looks like Kenjaku back, is just Takaba creating the perfect partner for himself with his curse technique in order to become a comedian. You could even argue, I've seen plenty of comments just say that it is Takaba's old comedian partner, but he's rekindled that friendship and now that person just has long hair. I think it's meant to be vague. I think you can kind of interpret whatever you want from that. The fact that the dialogue box is right over the partner's face and he has the same hairstyle and it was already deemed Kenjaku was the perfect partner, I think that was left open. Something like that can be left open, right? You'll always have the people that be like, this is the direct truth that Jujutsu Kaisen Part 2 is coming back. But to be completely honest with you, for as many loose ends as there are in the story, I think that's just something we're going to have to live with, unfortunately, because I think Gege Akutami is kind of done with this story. I think as much as he loved creating this, as much as he enjoyed having one of the best running shonen jumps, I think now that this company is allowing authors to end their stories when they want to, I think Gege is kind of just over Jujutsu Kaisen and is ready to move on. He told his story and that's it. You could argue that's a problem. I mean, the biggest issue of Jujutsu Kaisen, it seems from everything I've said, taking everyone's criticisms into effect and just compiling it, you could say, you know what, our problems with Jujutsu Kaisen is it wasn't longer. We didn't go as deep as we wanted to. And I think that's valid. I think that's a very valid criticism, because going back to the actual chapter for a little bit, it's funny when you see Maki talk with Daido and Mayo, the Katana Man and Sumo Man, when she mentions that, hey, Yuji and Hana are gonna start deleting the reincarnated sorcerers, or at the very least bringing them back and removing the cursed object from them now that we know we can, while, you know, letting them off the hook and saying, hey guys, you know, don't let me see you again or there's gonna be problems, you know, I'm not gonna look out for you after this, please survive, which is a cute moment. Again, for Maki, who is supposedly this person that lost their heart, lost all their chance of having emotion, her fondness of someone like Yuta, and also her ability to make secret deals with people that helped her out in the long run is great. But one thing she mentions is they're going back to America to save the incarnated sorcerers. Again, bring me to the military thing. Are there just no repercussions for multiple countries invading Japan? I guess you could argue their electronics were down, there had no communications. They probably didn't even know this happened, but are all these countries just, one, giving up on this unlimited energy source that they could potentially have? Are they not going to plan for another invasion, maybe a full-scale war on Japan? I know a lot of people in my comments have said that it's not that big of a deal, but it really does blow my mind that the after effects of sorcery being revealed to the world is just them receiving more calls like Ghostbusters, which is just insane to me. That at the very end of this chapter, of course, we get Yuji, Nobara, and Megumi going on a brand new mission to try and find this curse user that is remaining from the Culling game that may potentially be cursing a young girl or young civilians. And I think it's going to be a nice, cute story. Again, similar to Origin of Obedience and how that ended season 1. I think that's one of the best ways to end the series, is showing our characters and their level of sorcery as far as we've gotten, but also giving us a nice little remnant of the past, reminding us of what could be and what will continue, the adventures that will happen after the happy ending, right? Those are the stories that we would want to see. And I think this reincarnated player may be the final piece of the Culling game that we need, whether it be some Kenjaku lore or just some lore on the Heian era. Maybe Yoro is cursing people or something, because Yoro, we didn't even see Oro in this touch base with everyone. If we don't see Oro, that proves to me that there are just some things in Jujutsu Kaisen that we will just never get answered. Because, you know, I'm fingers crossed that Gege can kind of wrap a nice bow on this. But for someone that said that they want to make Jujutsu Kaisen's ending as happy as possible, this penultimate chapter, just judging off of the community, they haven't been enjoying it as much. But again, for the kind of ride Jujutsu Kaisen took me on, I am thankful of Gege Akutami for everything that he did. As far as it goes, there is not really anything in this chapter that warrants really detailed discussion. Any of the theories that you're really going to see, like Kenjaku taking over Yuta, or their potential, like Kenjaku being reborn, so that means that Kenjaku is going to start the merger, or the chapter's name being Dream's End, where Sukuna is going to activate the merger in his last spells of life, unless we get an Evangelion ending where the merger happens and the entire world gets wiped blank or something like that, or it really does bring the world into apocalypse and start part 2, which again I think is really likely. And I say that because I know some people are going to be mad at me that I don't think we're going to get a sequel. I'm telling you right now, if we get a sequel, I will be overjoyed. I will take back everything and say, oh my God, we made it finally. But until we get that announcement, if this is the ending that we're going to get, while I think it gives a nice ending for a lot of the different characters. I mean, you even see Charles Bernard, he's getting a one-shot and everything, which is just beautiful. Shoko even quits smoking. You gotta love to see that Shoko is able to quit smoking even now. She started up again during the Shibuya incident, and now that this whole stressful situation, these last stressful 2 months are finally over, she looks at that cigarette and she says, you know what, screw it, which I love that. If anyone got a beautiful ending, it's Shoko. And also Higuruma, who got away with murder because the higher-ups, or at least what remains of the higher-ups, which is interesting to me, the higher-ups, which is basically, as we confirmed, the remaining people in our group, basically a group of teenagers and some headstrong adults here, are pulling the Japanese government's arm in order to get Higuruma off scot-free with murder, which is funny to me, but something that's beautiful, and I think Higuruma gets a nice ending as well, is the girl that was, I assume, his assistant, someone that worked underneath him. She says that, she makes a funny joke too. She says, poor choice of words, but there's gonna be a retrial. I'm gonna stick it to you, Higuruma. Which Higuruma can't even deny because he wants to be held accountable for the deaths that he caused. So if this girl's able to retrial him and get him sentenced to death or something, I mean, I'm sure Higuruma wouldn't be mad. Higuruma's pissed he survived the Sukuna fight, let's be honest. I will say I am definitely excited to see this last chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, especially knowing that it's a trio chapter. Give me a nice, great ending with Yuji, Megumi, and Nobara, and maybe I can die happily, but we'll have to see. Some other things from the chapter, just to touch base and close off. You have the Megumi and Hana ship slowly forming together. I know a lot of people are really trying to fight the fact that Megumi and Hana are going to end up together, but the writing was set in stone. Even though Megumi's kind of caught off guard, Megumi strikes me as someone that is not good with women at all when it comes down to actually getting deep. Megumi doesn't like being vulnerable, you know? I think that's what it is. Megumi acts cool, but when you start asking him the hard questions, he starts stuttering, and you can tell. Again, the two fumblers, perfect for each other. You can't argue with that. And you know what? Rinamai, a character who, again, I even question why Gege brought him into the story. What a weird character. His little sugar curse technique, I guess it came in handy, but I don't know what he was going with, but he tries to apologize to the person he bullied. He gets rejected, but you know what? Kudos to him for doing something that he definitely did not have to do. He could have changed his life and didn't interact with his past, but he chose not to. And you know what? Speaking of choosing to interact with your past and choosing not to, isn't that what this whole story ended up being about? Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. I really, really enjoyed the series, regardless of whatever criticisms you may be able to make for its ending. And you know what? Hit that like button, subscribe, and just make sure that we're able to put our level of passion into some of these other great new series that are going on, guys. We got Dandadan, we got Kagurabachi, Sakamoto Days, Gakiakuta, I'm considering reading. Let me know what you guys are reading to replace Jujutsu Kaisen, and check out the main channel if you want to see some other video essay content. And you know what? I'll see you guys for the final chapter. Peace.